Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our parenting panel. We're sorry we're starting a few minutes late, but I'm glad you're all here. We just wanted to start by introducing each of us. We are all parents on the panel, of course, and I think this is going to be a really important and hopefully really great conversation where we're able to kind of share our experiences and sort of how that's intertwined with parenting in our experiences, and hopefully we can relate to some of you out there. Just quick introduction, I'm Morgan. I am a BRCA1 previvor. I'm a mom to one and another on the way. And thank you. Thank you. I had my preventative mastectomy before I had my son, and we had our children through IVF with PGT to make sure that they don't get my BRCA mutation. I'm also a certified child life specialist, which means I work in pediatrics with kids and families and help them sort of navigate healthcare experiences. We develop coping plans. We provide distraction and normalization in the hospital setting for kids and help parents navigate these tough conversations with their kids, whether it's their own diagnosis or their child's. So that's a little, is this working? Oh, it is. That's a little bit about me, and I just want to hand it over to our panel members. So this is Melary.
Hi, everyone. Is this working? No? Check. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Melary, triple negative breast cancer survivors, 5 years. Thank you. I have a set of twin girls. They are 12 years old, and then I have a 2-year-old. Oh, bring it closer. Here? Okay, perfect. Triple negative breast cancer survivor, 5 years. I have a set of twin girls. They're 12 years old. Thank you. And then I have a 2-year-old who I call my breasty magic baby. She was definitely not planned or in my thoughts, but she's here. She's amazing. I'm just honored to be here. I am essentially a professional at managing chaos, both at work and at home. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brooke. I am a stage 1 IDC ER/PR positive cancer survivor, 5 years. I have 5 children total. I have 4 older stepchildren who are young adults now, but were teenagers when I was diagnosed. And I have an 8-year-old son who was 2.5 when I was diagnosed. And outside of being a breast cancer survivor, I'm also an educator, 25 years teaching early childhood. I now do educational consulting.
Hello. Okay. Hi, I'm Paige Mooney. I am a survivor. I was diagnosed with stage 1, grade 2, hormone-positive invasive ductal carcinoma in 2023. It'll be 3 years in October since my double mastectomy. Not only am I a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a project manager, which it's a constant juggle. I got diagnosed 3 months after I turned 30 years old. It felt like it was supposed to be a point where I was building my life and raising my kids, working, and just, and then that kind of intersected, and I had to figure out how to be a patient and a mom at the same time while still somehow working remote. And my daughter is now 10 years old, and my son is 8.
Thank you all. So we're just going to sort of jump into where everyone's story sort of intertwines with their parenting journey. I'm sure if you're here, you are possibly a parent or hoping to become a parent, and hopefully everyone sharing their stories, we can kind of give you some information, or even just by sharing our stories, maybe you guys can relate and pull some things from everyone's story that feel familiar. One of the things I want to start with is the emotional reality. So I just want to ask, and we can sort of open this up, anyone who wants to speak, what was one of the hardest emotional parts of parenting while navigating cancer?
I know for me, when you're going through cancer, you don't know how you're going to feel, like day in, day out. Sometimes I would wake up and feel like I was about to be the best parent ever, particularly when I was going through like chemotherapy and then the mastectomy and reconstruction. And so some mornings I would wake up and feel great about myself. And like within an hour, I did not feel so great about myself. Because there's just like an emotional imbalance, and you can feel really good, but also there's so much going on in your brain. And I would show up for my son in all the ways that you should for a 2.5-year-old, because they don't really have any idea what is going on. But then I would sort of be sidelined by the emotional reality of how I was feeling, and along with that came a tremendous amount of guilt about how I was showing up for him or not.
Thank you. Anyone else?
For me, it was trying to be vulnerable and strong at the same time. I was carrying a tremendous adult-sized weight, and I was trying to figure out how to get that into a child-sized size to be able, to tell them. The emotional reality of that was just, there were moments where I would be okay all day, hold it together, and then there were moments where I would break down. And it was good because, like, a lot of people that I talked to before, they're like, it's okay if you have to cry in the shower. It's okay if you need to sing really loud in the car to, like, process. So for me, like, the emotional reality it really felt like a roller coaster.
I would say for me was I was diagnosed in 2020, and we had just recently moved to Florida. Single parent, my girls. I have some family there, but not my strongest support. And had the diagnosis. Turns out I am BRCA2. A lot of information that I just didn't understand, and explaining that to my 5-year-old. And even to my family, I didn't have words for it or language. And I think I was diagnosed in April, and my surgery was in June. And it wasn't until June 3rd that it finally hit, when I was finally home and I didn't have my breast. And my daughters were helping in the shower. And it had a lot of questions. And it was almost like that's really where a lot of my identity shaped away. So it definitely hit hard for parenting while trying to rediscover yourself through all of that and still show up for my girls.
Absolutely. And that sort of lends into, what did you all decide to tell your kids, and when did you decide to tell them, just from time of diagnosis, and kind of how did you navigate those conversations with your kids based on their age or maybe their just general understanding, or sort of, I know typically I've seen in my work a lot of parents want to protect their kids from a lot of information and a lot of fear. And so it's just a really hard space to navigate. So how did you all kind of handle that?
For me, it was a little bit of a different circumstance. It wasn't our first time dealing with cancer. In 2020, right when COVID hit, my brother, my children's uncle, was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer. We have no genetic predispositions in our family whatsoever that lead to why it happened to him and myself. He fought very hard, and ultimately he passed away on Christmas morning of 2021. So that was my children's first experience with cancer. It was October 2022. I went to my doctor and I said, hey, something's not right here. They said, you're having a tremendous amount of anxiety from losing a family member due to cancer. I said, okay. I said, listen, I learned from this experience that swollen lymph nodes aren't super normal where they are, and I am confident in my body this is not normal. So it was October 22. I went for my first mammo. They looked at an ultrasound. They said, hey, no, those swollen lymph nodes, they're benign. So 10 months later, I go back for a mammo, and it's invasive ductal carcinoma. They said finding my cancer was like finding a mini marshmallow in a glass of milk. I was like, oh, thank you so much. And so it was a little bit harder for me because we had such a tremendous experience with cancer that we were so impacted, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to my kids, 8 and 6 at that time, so second and kindergarten, and tell them that I kind of had the same, I was going to use the C word. I was going to say, I have cancer. And so I really struggled with that. And I think that the mistake we made in our household was that we tried to hold it all in, my husband and I didn't want to tell them. And it added to my stress levels and anxiety. I had 30 days from diagnosis to mastectomy. So September 25th, I was told October 26th was my surgery. So it was like a 30-day rush to get everyone prepped for this. But I just had such a hard time telling them. And they figured out that I was stressed and dealing with something before I could actually tell them. They just knew something was wrong. So we went to them and we said, Mom is sick. And we didn't want to lie because we didn't know what was going to happen from there on out. I didn't want to say I was going to be okay. So I just said, I have a good team and they're taking care of me and we're going to do everything we can to make sure Mom's okay. And that's how ours was.
My son, like I said, was a 2-year-old when it happened. I was one of the people who lived through COVID during diagnosis, so it was an interesting time. The silver lining in that is that I was home. My husband was home. Our life dynamic was a little bit different. I also, as an educator and a parent, believe in being honest to children in what they can understand. So I did not tell my 2-year-old that I had cancer because he doesn't understand at that time what cancer is. But I did tell him that I was sick and that doctors were taking care of me. There were some things that they had to take out of my body that were hurting me, and when they took them out, hopefully I would be better, but my body was going to be a bit different. Honestly, he never presented differently. I think COVID did help because I was present. I also carved a lot of time out where I could to be present with him. And I don't mean 8 hours a day. I mean 10 minutes of being present in a 24-hour day on the days that I could. And he did not find out that I had cancer until about a year ago. I was changing. We're a very nude, comfortable family. So he's seen my reconstructed breasts without a nipple and has never really said anything about it for, the 5 years leading up to it, 4 years leading up to it. And then about a year ago, we were changing and he was like, when I get older, are my boobs gonna look like yours? And I was like, no, you have nipples and I don't. And he was like, And I was like, Ace, that's my son's name. I said, I had something called cancer. And unfortunately, at this point, my father died of cancer. And so he and my husband's mother, so he knew the word cancer. And I sort of was like, oh gosh, am I ready for this? But I was like, I have to tell him. He's curious, it's appropriate. And I just told him I had cancer. I was very lucky that it was caught early enough. And I've lived for 4 years without it coming back. And he did have questions but cancer comes back. And we know people who died of cancer. And I just validated all of that. absolutely. Grandpa died and I wish he hadn't. And, medicine is different. It was a different type of cancer. But we don't always know. So that's why living in the present and being really grateful for the life we have when we have it is really important.
I think I ended up telling my girls through a YouTube video, and it was because I was also trying to understand how to break it down. Aside from my girls, I felt like I had to almost break down the news and parent my mom at that time and just figuring out how to tell her. So I kind of just all set them in the living room, and I was like, well, Mommy is sick, and this is what it means. They were 5. I'm not sure that they comprehended a lot of what was going on. And I just took it appointment by appointment. Surgery was coming up, so, hey, Mommy's getting surgery. so I can be better, so I could be alive. And then once treatment started, like before, I'm going to lose my hair, I may look different, I may not feel the best all the time. So just having short conversations according to whatever they were able to comprehend at that time. I think now that they're older, they understand a little bit more of like the seriousness of like what cancer is and what I was going through. And even, you know, a few weeks ago, they were like, Mom, you have so many doctor's appointments. You know, I thought you were better. And I just smile because they're preteens. And I'm just like, yeah, I am better. I just want to make sure I'm here for you and your little sister. So
That was beautiful. My child life specialist heart is smiling because you all did so great. I think it comes down to you know your kids best, and you know your relationship with your kids. And as Brooke was saying, like based on your son's age at the time, it was not something that you needed to over-explain to him. Everyone, including children especially, they receive information, they process information in their own ways. And some kids benefit from a lot of information and they have about 1 million questions for you and you have to answer them all. And some kids have no questions. And I always just advise parents, you know your kid best. There are certain things that we can tell them that are developmentally appropriate and whatever you're comfortable with. But ultimately, it's up to you. I mean, you're the parent. So you guys all did a beautiful job.
And I have to say this because we were talking in the tent earlier and I said it. And it's funny with kids, and I realized it with mine. And just like you, with the openness in the household, like my kids have seen me. And so I feel like sometimes they'll ask like a really deep, difficult question. And then I have to like get that out and give them one, and then they'll be like, "Oh, okay. Can I have a chocolate milk?" Like, and so it's we carry it on such like a deeper level, but we all laughed like you did because we've all experienced it in some type of capacity where it's like, you know, your head's going and then they ask you that like question and you're like, oh yeah, well, you know, it's this. And then they're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. And I think that's just their kids' like way of coping because like you gave them what they needed and then it's like, all right, on to the next thing.
I definitely think they just need the answer. They don't necessarily need an explanation. They have a question. They need an answer, and giving it to them is the appropriate thing to do because when children do have questions and you leave those questions unanswered, they create their own answers, and then sometimes those answers are much worse or scarier than the actual answer would be.
Beautiful. That kind of goes right into the next sort of just talking about how we talk to our kids about it, right? How that kind of weaves into how we're parenting. So my next question is just sort of how did cancer change the type of parent that you are? I know we sort of talked about this a little bit while we met earlier, just sort of because cancer can change your perspective. It changes your day-to-day. Like Brooke said, some days you have energy to be super mom and some days you don't. And so just how did it change the way that you parent?
It definitely changed for me. I think I was always just on the go and so stressed and we got to get up, we got to do this. And like not being present in the moment of like enjoying the busyness of the morning or just being super intentional about, hey, I'm going to the doctors because we never think that our life is going to change. And so now it's so different where I'm like, hey, I'm going to the doctors, I'm going to be okay, and I will be back. I think my daughters, a lot of the times were like, but are you coming back or are you going to stay in the hospital? Are they going to send you to the hospital? And so almost reassuring that and through my own actions of showing up for myself, advocating for myself has been huge, where I'm teaching like the older one, like, hey, whenever something doesn't feel right, make sure you advocate. I'm a little bit more open about my feelings and emotions when I'm not feeling okay, when a memory comes or like there is a special day and I'm crying out of nowhere, just saying like, I'm just really sad. I'm processing this. I remember this. It was so scary. So just using that language and giving them that space to honor their feelings really, because it's a lot of load that we carry, and it's just really heavy, just saying that. And also, I always think that because they're the oldest, I'm like, this is also the space that I want you to create for yourself and for your little one, because we just never know. And not in a scary way, but I just always want you to be present in the moment and just take care of yourself.
I have a similar feeling about it. We're in our house, we're big on perspective. And that for an 8-year-old, it's sort of like things didn't go my way and I'm going to completely melt down. And you're like, let's put this in perspective. And so it works well for Cancer. And I feel like it made me actually a better parent than I was. And I felt like I went into parenting thinking I was going to have a lot figured out. I did not. But the one thing that has gotten me through being a parent and having Cancer is perspective and sort of what does this moment mean, and being honest about what the moment means. If I'm having a hard time and having an off day, you know, I can say to my son, I'm having an off day. But then also perspective, like, I'm in control of my emotions, and so that off day, I can give myself the space to be off, but then dialing it back in and being like, at this moment, my son needs connection. And so going back to like, let's put it in perspective, because however you look at life, you can shift it. And you do get to choose happiness, even in some of the most challenging times. And going through Cancer definitely reiterated that for me. And I feel like, I honestly feel proud that I was able to continue to live my life like that, and maybe in a fuller way because I was diagnosed with Cancer, and then pass that on to my son.
I think for me, it made me... So it started with my brother. After he passed, I kind of booked a vacation, kind of looked at, you know, the ordinary moments in life a little bit harder. And then when it happened with me, it was like double whammy. My husband was like, are we going to go to the moon? I was like, yeah, as far as we can go. We're going to do everything we can. But really, I think for me, it was just realizing what matters to me. Setting boundaries and making sure that what matters to me in my family unit gets done, and that we appreciate the ordinary moments, like the every little day moments, and even the not so smooth ones. Having a 10-year-old daughter is a challenge sometimes. I think being a parent is one of the most challenging jobs and the most fulfilling jobs, regardless. And so my daughter and I actually got into a little argument before I came here, and I felt very bad. And it was the night before I left Wednesday, and I woke up Wednesday, and I just grabbed her in the kitchen, and I just said, I love you. We both say mean words to each other sometimes. I said, but I want you to know that I really don't mean them. I said, I get overwhelmed sometimes, you get overwhelmed sometimes. She's about to go through puberty. So I think just like giving her the same grace I give myself. And like I said to them earlier, you know, sometimes the hard moments, I will look at her and I'll say, you know, I'm kind of living life for the first time too. And since I had her at 22, my kids have both seen me grow into more of an adult. And even in my marriage, I think just the whole family unit, I think that having people around you who can adapt to you changing and still love you, it just takes a little time and grace. And yeah, that's what I have.
I think saying I'm sorry is an incredibly powerful set of words to children, and all of us can benefit from saying I'm sorry. Like, it's okay to say, it's okay for tamoxifen to make you feel like you're an insane person, and you know, you just don't feel like yourself, and then you can just say, I'm sorry that I showed up that way for you, like I was wrong. And I feel like it goes a long way, and then it models for your children that it's absolutely okay to make mistakes and then say you're sorry for them.
We've been dealt a bad hand. We're not perfect humans. Like, I think we have a respect for things and we look at the silver linings and things, but ultimately, like, it's not a cakewalk, we know it. So we're going to have challenges, and I think that, like, persevering and building our strength, I think we're all some of the strongest people I know. So that's all.
Absolutely. And I think as each of you were answering, I was thinking about just parenting in general. I mean, I know for me, being a mother is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And you're not perfect. Like no mother is perfect. And it's really hard in those hard moments. Like when you're short with your child because of whatever reason. And when you have a bad day or when they're having a bad day, like every single day might be perfect, it might not be perfect. And I think that just speaks to parenting in general is so hard, and then adding this extra layer onto it and the guilt that brings you of maybe not having a great day. And it's hard because you don't want your child to have to. I know I feel guilty every time, like even being pregnant and hormonal. I'm like, oh my gosh, like sometimes I have so much less patience for my toddler, and I feel so guilty about it because he didn't ask for me to be in this mood today, and I feel so bad about it. But it's true, like we're not perfect humans, and saying sorry and helping them understand it's okay to have hard moments, and they're going to understand what you are navigating and what you're going through. And I didn't mention this before too, but I was a child of a parent with cancer. My dad had cancer when I was 13. He was diagnosed and he passed when I was 16. And so being a teenager and having a sort of formative years, you're kind of in your own head, in your own space. And it's hard. Like a lot of things felt really unfair. Like I had to say no to social plans because somebody had to be home with my dad on a Friday night. And that was when I was trying to be like there. And I was in high school. I wanted to go to this and I wanted to have friends. And, it's hard. They're going through really hard. It's hard for them to understand, but ultimately, you can only do what you can do in the moment. And you understand. I mean, as the child, I understand now, So sort of just before we go into a Q&A, because I want to be mindful of time, I just wanted to focus a little bit on like parenting and mental health aspect of it. How did you each take care of how do you each currently take care of your emotional well-being while balancing this duality of parenting and cancer and survivorship?
I'll go first. We talked about this. So this is my third year at camp. And I think my first year, getting through the survivorship, I was really focused on that. A lot of support around you, and things are different. Then you go into your second year, and you're kind of riding that wave, and mentally I was clouded. I had really bad thoughts. I was struggling. So I got to camp in June last year, and I just wasn't feeling myself. Felt like I wasn't upholding my momager title at home. And then from June to July to August, I kind of went deeper and deeper into that hole. And it was one night I had realized that I'd been doom scrolling, and that my children asking me for things, I didn't want to hear it. And so it was a realization one night where I was like, I'm in a bad place. I haven't been on any type of support during this whole journey. I haven't been on an antidepressant. They gave me a bottle of something to keep me calm, during diagnosis. But I came from a family that was really against getting any type of help for mental health or medication or anything like that. And with tamoxifen combination and taking my hormones away, I felt like an emotionless monster at that point. So I went to my oncologist. I said, listen, is it the tamoxifen? Is it me? And is this who I am? And she said, no, it's most likely not. She said we could do a couple things to see, what's going on. And ultimately, they put me on an antidepressant in August. And the last 10 months of my life have changed so significantly. It's really hard just being yourself and then having little people around you and all these responsibilities. And sometimes you can get lost in it. And for anyone, who finds yourself there, I give anyone so much credit who can pull themselves out of a hard place. And I know we've all been there at some place in our journeys. So if anyone wants to talk to me about that, but I've been promoted in my job. I take my kids to urban air a lot more. We're cooking some more homemade meals. Just those like small wins for me. I tell my husband I'm giving myself my gold star for the day. So that was my accomplishment this year. I got my mental health support. Talking to a therapist, just kind of doing that to keep me on track and just to make sure that I don't end up there again. So,
For me, it was going to psychotherapy when I was 26 gave me the tools to navigate a lot of things in my life. What I guess now there's a name for it. I was a highly feeling kid. I'm still a highly feeling person. And so everything that happened around me, I just felt all of it. And when I was in my 20s, and into my early 30s, it had a huge impact. I was very anxious. There was just a lot going on for me. And I learned a lot of tools through that experience. So honestly, when I was diagnosed with cancer, it gave me the ability to tap back into those tools, to give myself grace when things did not go as planned, because they don't, even when you know all the tools, sometimes your body acts outside of itself and you don't show up how you want to, or you're not feeling your best. And then I think that what I said earlier about the perspective shift, when I would have moments, I would just really have to dig deep in myself and just put things in perspective as much as I could controllably do. I've been very fortunate that it's worked for me, but I think there are so many different tools and ways to combat mental health, especially through the cancer journey, and then you put children on top of that. And I think everyone deserves to have someone that they could talk to about it, whether it's a professional, a partner, a best friend, a mom, and to know that you can lean on those people.
During, I believe it was my second treatment, I became really anxious, and the thought of dying was so loud. And I started prepping. I started prepping for the worst and where my daughters would go. And I remember just going into that second treatment and just reaching out to my oncologist and saying hey, I really think I need something to get me through, just because I can't get this head out. I can't get this thought out of my head. And I can't sit in the chair still and do all the things. So I started going to a mental health professional. It changed my life. It changed parenting. I found this space. Thank you. And now I am on the road to complete my master's in mental health counseling. Just because I find it so important. We are dealing with so many aspects, and as parents, or even when you're trying to build a family, or whether you want to build a family or not, and then this huge diagnosis or a genetic testing could change your life and your thought process and your perspective and just all of the above. So it started there. I still see a therapist, and I have ever since I was diagnosed. And I change them all the time, or they change all the time. But just to have someone there listening and just giving me different perspectives on how I can see or how I can process certain things. But most importantly, just coming to camp alone, for me, it has been really, really therapeutic, very healing. There are things that come up or things that I am able to process. I'm able to take the time out and just say, wow, I just haven't talked about this, or I haven't been able to be loud about this feels heavy, or I feel angry, or I'm still grieving, and not feel some sort of shame, because that's also a thing, right? Oh, well, you're 5 years out, or oh, you have the kids, and it's just this is so much more than just that. So coming to camp, keep showing to camp, lean on community, and reach out to people who just get it.
That was great. And I think it's like I was thinking as each of you were answering too, is like about being at camp and finding your breasties and again, just to go back, even just motherhood in general, like having other moms around to talk about things. I feel like that's been one of the most helpful things for me, just having other moms to talk to about momhood. So never mind having a space here where you have moms who are also breasties that kind of get it. I think that's so therapeutic. That was beautiful. So I think we have a few minutes for questions. If anybody has any questions for anyone, sure, we can go right here. Oh, okay, he'll bring you a mic.
Also, before you ask your question, I just need to announce I'm very happy. This is my 3rd year, and I was the recipient of the perky nipples yesterday. So I will be going home and showing my daughter. And just like in our naked households, I have them now, and I can't wait. I hope she's happy for me.
So this might not apply, but with your experience, I was going through this question in my mind and crying before I even said it, so I'm glad I got that out. I was diagnosed when my daughter was 2, and she is I don't know if she's going to inevitably ask me about a sibling, and I can't provide.
We were trying to, but anyway, how can I or how should I talk to her about that when she inevitably asks that question? Thank you.
Absolutely. So I think what I would recommend you as a child life specialist would say, again, approaching it from a perspective, you're her mother and you know your daughter. And this is a hard question. It's so emotional for you, and it's definitely okay to show her that emotion. How old is she now? 3. So she'll probably ask maybe someday. Mm-hmm. An inquisitive kid. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's that.
And that's just it. Like she might ask you that question in a passing, like while she's in the middle of twirling around doing something else, and you might be like, "Oh my gosh, this is the moment," and it might be a really big moment for you. And then, like you said, she may turn around and ask for a peanut butter and jelly. Like you don't know, but that also could just be her processing, and it's going to depend on where she is. At what point she does ask you that question. But just being honest with her, and you can explain to her, I know that because she might also see some of her friends or peers having little siblings coming along, just kind of explaining to her, Mommy and Daddy did want a baby. We did want to give you a sibling, but remember, Mom got sick. And part of my medicine or part of my treatment, you can kind of simplify it a little bit, so in a way she would understand, we're not going to be able to have another baby. Mommy was only able to have one baby, and just kind of turn around, I'm so glad that I have you, and I'm so thankful that we have you, and I know that you would love to have a sibling, and just validate her feelings, and just remind her, like, it's okay that you want a sibling, and I wanted you to have a sibling too, and that's just not what happened. And just kind of, again, giving her the space to feel that, and giving her the space to run off and want a peanut butter and jelly, and maybe come back 3 days later and ask another question about it, because kids just process things differently. And just letting her know that it's not slim, because I have siblings, but I imagine I've heard from a lot of only children, they're like, when they get older, they might be like, why didn't I ever get a sibling? Yeah. Just kind of having that conversation at whatever stage that she's in, whenever it kind of comes back up over the years, which it may or may not. But hopefully she'll understand. I mean, it's something that was out of your control. And just kind of giving her, like, I'm sure you're going to show her compassion in the way that you answer her, and so she'll return that to you, I'm sure.
My son asked this question. So I was actually pregnant the month before I was diagnosed. My son was 2, and I was like, we're going to have one more. And I had a miscarriage, and then 4 weeks later, I found out I had cancer. And there's so much going on when you're diagnosed, and questions about fertility came flooding in, and I could not wrap my head around it. And I was like, I have this one little boy, I have older stepchildren, I love this child is everything I could want a child to be. I'm good, I'm good. And I would be remiss to say years have passed, and I was like, did I make the right decision? You know, like, and my son never really asked. He was okay with being the youngest, but about 2 years ago, it started to be like, I really want a brother. I really want a brother, really. And I was like, oh, no, we're not going to have any more, and he was really persistent about it. And I did tell him honestly, like, my body, I cannot have any more children, like, he was also developmentally at a stage in his life where he could maybe understand it a bit more. And so I said, we can. He was like, but that's so unfair. I don't, and I was like, you were the one that I got to have. And I did really focus on how special it is that the universe created him, and through everything, that is what I had. And his response was that we could just adopt one. So we're still working through that, but it's very painful to know, right? Like, to just know that possibility was taken away from you. It's hard not to get emotional about it. There was a time where honestly I couldn't talk about it as easily as I am now, because I just thought I was going to have more. I love children. I just thought I would have more, and it was very hard to admit and say out loud that was not going to happen. But I did get to a time where the conversation was comfortable and I could have it with my son, and he's still working on a sibling, but he knows that I cannot physically have one, and he understands, and he has stopped, pushing on it.
My children have not stopped pushing on it. It has been explained multiple times. I think a 10 and 8-year-old just don't know the logistics. I mean, sometimes it's hard for me to track like what's even going on with myself. And as they were younger, like I started delicately by just saying, I can't, my body can't, just like everyone else. And even though I have explained over and over again, and we've adoption, we went through like every type of animal possible that like we could possibly get as a family. I'm like, no. I'm like, no, we don't need to, so, but I think that I think that even as like a teenage daughter, right, there's certain things that your parents tell you, your mother tells you, that you could live your whole life like knowing that they told you that, but then there isn't an appreciation for it once you get to a certain age, because really when we're young girls and stuff, you don't know the logistics of everything that happens, so I think that as you go through it, and I think they said great things, but just choose what you're comfortable saying and stick to it, and then as they get older, you're going to get more pushback. It's going to come. And I think that, just telling them over and over, I just can't. And I let it roll off my back. When they first started, I would get so emotional, and because it's me. But now I let it roll off a little bit, and I'm just like, I can't, but I love you guys so much. So.
You're also grieving. Like, I think it's important to give yourself the space to grieve the fact that option was taken away from you. Like, I think it's really important to carve out space for that before you put pressure on yourself about how you're going to explain this to your child. And when you're ready, you will absolutely have the words to do that, but let yourself grieve. I think it's important.
Hi, is this on? So my name's Jenny. My kids were 2 and 5 when I was diagnosed a little over 2 years ago, and they both handled it like champs. I was pretty honest with them. With the 5-year-old, I actually told her I have cancer. With the 2-year-old, I told him I was sick, But once I finished treatment, last year is when things started to actually get harder for them, I think. Especially my older one, I think she kept a lot inside, and she really rallied. Like, I was constantly checking in with her teachers, like, how's she doing? Are there any signs of distress? What can we do? And she's like, she's perfect. But then once I was done with treatment, all of a sudden she was, oh my God, a 7-year-old is, she's a lot. And something I've noticed recently is she's a very heavy kid now, like not weight-wise, but like emotionally heavy. She's heavy. She has these deep thoughts, and she's so thoughtful, and she reads a lot, and she's serious. She's like a serious kid. And my son is 5, and he's light as a feather. He is a joy. He walks into a room, he greets everyone. He's an open book. He puts on shows. He's so much fun, and he's light. And I watch her look at him, and she hates him. And I can see and I can feel the resentment. It's palpable. And it breaks my heart as their mom, because I love them both so much. And he's so easy to be around, and he's such a good time, and she's so hard. And she's not, I know, and like she's so, I love her. She's beautiful and wonderful, and she can be light, and but I see their relationship struggle, especially from her. He gives to her, he wants her, he's a joy, and she can't stand him. And I can tell it's on another level. I see the resentment. She hates how quickly he accepts whatever his surrounding is. And I don't know if you guys have any advice or experience or just anything.
If you want to talk later, I can relate.
Let's do it, girl.
I'm literally sitting here like, yes. And I think, so now my daughter's 10, my son is 8. And my son is
So
like,
same,
he
yeah.
walks in and he is like the mayor of the town. He would come here, he'd know you all by name. And, you know, it's hilarious. He has full on adult conversations. He makes people laugh. And my daughter is, she wears her heart on her sleeve. Her emotions are very heavy. And I think when I was a girl too, I think back to that, and emotionally, I was really heavy, but I think it builds a different type of person, especially when you're emotional and you're in tune with your feelings, which I think is a good thing. I think people who are in tune with their feelings and emotions are great. And so Madison, my daughter, looks at it as if she is the harder child. And I always tell her, no, I want you to speak your mind. You and your brother are different individuals, and you're going to be. And she does resent him for the way that he naturally is. And I'm trying to teach her that she can't. Everyone is different. Your sibling is a gift, and that, you know, you should have love for each other. But I just empathize with you so much on that. I feel the everyday struggle. And I think we should chat later.
It's funny because she was old enough to understand enough of what was going on. And so she carried a much heavier weight during my treatment. And Leo was like, he shaved my head and it was a party. And she was like back in the corner crying. So just, they experienced such a different last 2 very important years of their lives and their childhood. And I don't know. I feel like I broke them, you know?
I'm going to put on my educator's hat for a second. I think carving out moments for her to process emotions, and I don't mean talk about emotions, process emotions. And one of the best ways to do that, particularly with a child, is creativity. So
Therapy.
if she's really
She also
like,
has a therapist.
no, well, if she's really in, and maybe it's stuff she's not even sure she's into, like watercolor paper and a really nice set of watercolor paints, drawing materials, you know, any sort of art material. Creativity gives children the power to understand themselves in a way that they might not have the words for. And I know with my son, granted, this is like what I do for a living, so for me it was definitely easier to carve out that time. But when I was present with him, a lot of what we did while I went through cancer and then continue to do now, the way we connect is we create together. You know, like we take out art supplies and we just create something. We create our own little maker space, and it could be just leftover paper and tape. And because children, they have an innate ability to dream and imagine and process their emotions, but they don't always have the words for it. And I recommend with children who there is like a weight, especially where they've gone through something that's traumatic, having the space to do that in a way that they can be in their own heads. Creating is a really powerful way to do it.
Is this on? Okay. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories. I'm going to try, definitely going to cry, so I'm not even going to apologize. But, so I'm metastatic, and when I first got cancer in 2017, I was breastfeeding my 15-month-old, and my older daughter was 2, in second grade. And I did all the things. I was super proud of myself. I was, had the conversations in age-appropriate ways. I felt comfortable with it. They felt comfortable with it. And I think one reason is because I really believed what I was saying, which was, this year is gonna fucking suck. Excuse me, I'm a New Yorker. And, and then it's gonna be okay. And then in 2023, when I got re-diagnosed, I could not look at my children for the first couple months without breaking down. The fact that the idea of even telling them was like, I couldn't get the words in my mouth. I have a 17-year-old who, now she's 17, and my older one is 11. And 11-year-old going through puberty, 17-year-old highly sensitive child, generalized anxiety disorder. And this, I don't mean to be cynical, but this very real defense mechanism that we have to tell ourselves, like, enjoy each day and have perspective, can sound aspirational when you ask a child to accept that their mother might not be here. But go ahead, have a great time at school. Like, that heaviness is something that I cannot imagine any child could handle. And for me, the idea of them growing up without a mother is just unbearable. We are so close. My 17-year-old is like, tomorrow if someone said, pick someone to go to Paris with, it would be her. She's incredible. They're both incredible. And I'm just wondering, I have since told them, but it did take a while, and there was a lot of freaking judgment, by the way, about that. And I was feeling good. I was on oral meds, but I have been on 6 lines of treatment. And now I'm on Enhertu, and so I'm losing my hair. So we had to talk about that. And they are so confused. Like, you told us it was gonna be okay, it was gonna be a real hard year. And what does this mean? Is your cancer back? And I spoke to a lot of people I'm treated at MSK, and they did give me some good one-liners, like, some cancer has to be treated forever so you can stay healthy. And maybe for my 11-year-old, she's buying that, but like my 17-year-old is not really buying that. And it's like, I don't want to rob her of any normalcy that she might be able to experience now while I'm living. And then when I know she'll also have to at some point live in a horrible trauma. So it's like, I want to protect her happiness now. I don't want to lie to her. And at the same time, I don't want her to go to school every day thinking, my mom might die, which is what she'll do. She's a ruminator. She is, so anxious. And I'm just wondering if you have any tips from that perspective.
I'm happy to take this one because, as I mentioned before, my dad passed away when I was 16. I was almost 17. I think my mom's watching this at home, so I don't want her to be offended by this, but my parents actually never told me that my dad was metastatic. I think it was part of protecting us. They kind of told us, I mean, they might have, I might just not remember, but as I remember it, it was sort of like, we're trying a different treatment. Well, that one's not working, so we're going to try a different one. And I was aware that he was on hospice, and they did tell me what hospice meant. But I think being 16, 17, I just was like not processing it. And I'm like, I think I personally was sort of in denial. I did have a little while of going to school and worrying if I was going to get pulled out of class a lot. And it was hard, but I think we're older now, right? So we have much more complex thinking, and not to minimize what your daughters might be processing, but I genuinely think like processing it as a 33-year-old now is so different than the way I ever would have. I would have processed it so differently than when I was 17, because I was living in my own world, and I was so worried about my dad, of course, and I saw the worry on my mom, and I saw him, get sicker and sicker. But I don't think I processed it when it was happening. I definitely was in a little bit of denial. So anyway, my point is just, I think it's great that you have had this conversation with your daughter. And like we were sort of talking about it before, but like with talking to your kids about things, you can tell them things and try to get information out of them, and they might not want to give it to you, but you're leaving the space open. And like you said, you want to create happy memories and have it sort of be happy while you are here. I think that's really all you can do. And, like we were saying earlier, some days you may not feel up for it, and that's going to be okay. And, she'll process it. Maybe she'll end up, seeking a therapist. I know.
Oh, they're both in therapy.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, because that will be
they're
very
actually
helpful.
both in art therapy, which has been
that's
really
beautiful.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Dance, movement, and art therapy.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, it's like we want to protect our kids so much, right? We want to protect them, and we want to make sure we give them the information, but not too much. And we want to know that they're going to be okay. And how can you not? You want to make sure your daughter's okay. I think I don't think it sounds like a good answer, but like you're doing what you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and all you can do is just like trust and try to trust in what you're doing, and like providing those opportunities for conversation and the opportunity for her to feel. And yeah, I mean, they'll be okay. And they're seeing how strong you are. And even just having that conversation, you're so strong. And they'll appreciate that.
It's good to hear you say that. Thank you. But I also speak to a lot of women that are saying to me, like, I never have gotten over the loss of my mom. So that's true.
I still miss my mom every single day. Like every single day. And she lived, she died too young for my liking, but I did get her. I just wanted to say, you're already an amazing mama. Like, you are here. Like, you are trying to find the answers, and your children will grow. And the person that you are now, that is going to be the person that your children remember and know. And so you just have to remind yourself. And I know I'm a New Yorker too, so it's okay. No, but you have to remind yourself of that. Like, you are showing them through the way you live and what you're modeling for them, like what it is to be a human. And like, you can't belittle that. And I think your children will grow older, because we all, our executive functioning skill gets better, and they will see things differently than they see now. But I wanted to give you kudos. And also, one piece of advice from my mom, and this is no way to make any sort of diagnosis seem small, but because I was such a highly feeling kid, and my mom was not a therapist and wasn't quite sure how to point me in the right direction, she used to say, Brooke, just put it in a box for today, and you can revisit it tomorrow. So whatever was really tormenting me or upsetting me, she would say, like, think of a physical box in your head. Take that feeling, put it in a box, and close it up for now, and tomorrow you can revisit it. And I have to tell you, I have used that for my entire life, and it really does help just give you a moment to breathe.
we have like 10 minutes of worry time every day. And if it's not during the 10 minutes of worry time, we are not allowed to worry. We put it on a shelf. We don't have a box. And then we take them down, and we talk about it. But sorry, but my other question is about camps. Like, have any of you sent your kids?
Yeah, it's Camp Kasim. There's actually
I've heard like a
information
bunch of
about it in
different
there.
ones. So, okay.
There's information about it in the sponsor tent where the
Okay,
merch tent
great.
is.
Thank you,
But
Kasim.
yeah, that could be incredibly helpful too.
Yeah.
I also just wanted to let everyone. We can take more questions. I mean, we're here. It's 1:24. No, we can't. Okay. Okay.
We
Yeah,
can
I was gonna
take
say
more
it's
questions
1:24,
off
so it's
stage.
lunch. So if everybody wants to eat, I'm sorry. Yeah. So, thank you so much for coming, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
That's right. One big great round of applause. Another amazing seminar.